I always thought the Banshee was just an old Irish tale, something my grandmother used to tell us to give us kids the creeps and panicked giggles before bed. My breath caught in my throat. The house was silent, too silent. Even the wind had died. The air felt colder. The world seemed to hold its breath. By dawn, the news had come. My brother Sean was found dead in his bed.
I'm going into the history, but I wanted to just tell you a little bit about something that actually happened to my family.
No way.
Yeah.
No way?
Yeah. I spoke to my nana about this. I was like, was he not scared? And my nana said, no. He followed this woman all the way through the house, down the stairs and out into the front garden. Hello, Charne.
Hello, Laura. Laura.
We've been having a little catch up before, but I feel like we have to do some introductions again. So
how have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. Navigating my Vietnam life, possibilities of no work and things like that. So it's been it's not stressful, nothing stressful here, but just been a bit of a week this past week, but nothing I can't handle. How about you?
Good. I'm sick. So I think I sound very
husky.
Very husky, very sexy husky.
And I think that's going to go down well today if you're doing a little bit of a story, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you guys a story today, but before we do that, we have what do you have in front of you, Laura?
So I've got a deck of tarot cards. We are both quite new to tarot, so we're going to give it a try. And the idea is before each podcast, depending on how we're feeling, today we're just going to pull a random card and just see kind of how it applies to the podcast and how we think it's going. Bear with us because we have to kind of look at what each card means. Also, these cards are illustrated really, really nicely. Maybe we'll put some pictures online eventually of some of the cards.
Yes. We'll talk about probably later in the podcast. We do have an email now, and we're going to set up an Instagram. So whenever we talk about things we do, any visuals you need, we'll post that on our Instagram. I'll tell you the name later once we've decided on one.
Yeah. So yeah, I've shuffled these up. Do you want to do one each?
Let's do one for the pod and then we'll do one for us.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right.
Shall I lay them out?
Yeah, just spread them.
No, please don't come for me if I'm doing this completely wrong, but we all start somewhere.
Nice.
There we go.
Circle. Okay. Let's pull one for the pod. This one. Right, Noel. This is Page of Cups.
Okay.
So you're gonna look up.
Yep.
What is the Page of Cups? And it is upright, if that matters.
Okay.
I know some of them are up and down. This is upright.
Page of Cups.
Page of Cups.
What can I see the illustration?
Pretty.
Okay. Now this is straight off Google. We can go into maybe a more reputable site eventually. But so the Page of Cups tarot card generally signifies new beginnings in love, positive emotional experiences, creativity, and a connection to your inner child. I feel like this is I think this is like not a childish thing to do, but it's one of the benefits of living here is you can have hobbies like this that you wouldn't have. Like I wouldn't, maybe if I was having like a few drinks back home, but I feel like doing this podcast and like
we are telling stories.
Yeah. And having like the chance to research things and learn things, it's like
it's very I get what you mean. Not childish, but it's very like
It often represents a message of hope, new love interests, or a renewed sense of wonder and enthusiasm in your current relationship, often associated with a youthful, innocent perspective.
Okay, so podcast side, this is a very new podcast. We're learning to love the research into the stories, learning about different cryptids and old histories. So I feel like this is quite an appropriate card.
I think so too. Yeah, the Page of Cups, I've just gone straight down to creativity, and it says the Page of Cups can represent a surge of creative energy, artistic inspiration, which you've had today.
I feel like I was very creative today. I sat down.
Did you just wake up
wrote
feeling
my
like that?
story. I felt very motivated today.
Yeah.
Which is something I don't usually feel when I'm sick, or even haven't been feeling the last week. But today I felt, that's why I was like, oh, let's get the Gmail ready. Let's get this. I was thinking about logos for it, and I was just, you know, it was kind of flowing.
I think that definitely applies. It also goes on to say, like, important points to remember. While positive, I'm going to go down a dark hole here. While positive, the Page of Cups can sometimes represent a lack of experience. I was just saying to Nate today, like, the editing side of things has taken me like a little bit longer than I'd like, but I'm enjoying it, but it's slow.
But that is also like a creative thing.
Yeah.
Editing.
Yeah.
And learning how to edit. New beginnings, learning. Oh my God. Does this work?
Represent a lack of experience or overly idealistic expectations.
Okay, which is fair, because you were saying earlier today, you're like, oh, I'm learning this, but I feel like I'm still a bit behind.
Yeah.
Like it's quite intimidating.
Yeah.
But maybe just take a step back and be like, we are new at this. It's okay to learn.
Yeah, it's okay to like just go slowly. And it also, like, that goes into the next thing it says here. This card encourages you to be present and appreciate the beauty in your current situation. And then, again, I'm quite new to tarot, but it also, if you were to pull other cards, it has consider surrounding cards. To fully understand the meaning of the Page of Cups, always analyze other cards in your tarot spread. So, well,
we could use the other cards, the ones that we pull.
Yeah, and try and see how they tie together.
So how about you pull one for you?
Just automatically went for this one without thinking. Okay, so I've got the Queen of Cups. Again, a very nice.
Do you want me to to read? All right, here we go. AI overview for Google.
Yeah.
What did you say? The Queen of Cups.
Queen of Cups. Yeah.
I'm so bad with the like little autocorrect bar. I never write my words at all.
No.
I just, yes, this is what I want to say, Google. All right. The Queen of Cups is a tarot card that symbolizes compassion, emotional wisdom, and intuition. Oh.
Okay.
She is often associated with love, kindness, and sensitivity. Can you show me?
Yeah.
Queen.
I feel like she's channeling a little bit there, like a bit of me there.
Yeah, definitely. We'll post this. We'll post the 3 cards. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
So the Queen of Cups can represent a mature, intuitive woman. She can also represent the unconscious mind and the thoughts that come with it.
Okay.
The Queen of Cups can be a reminder to treat others with empathy and to be compassionate with yourself. She can encourage you to see the divine in everyone and everything.
I like that one.
So how do you feel like that relates to you?
I guess like what I was saying about work, maybe like work and things like that. It's very easy to get not stressed and take things out on other people, but automatically feel like everybody else is wrong and like
hate your husband a little bit.
Yeah. Like today I've been a bit more motivated in looking for other work and trying to do it myself rather than relying on other people. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm like, okay.
But it does say here, be compassionate with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
The tarot card also symbolizes the Queen of Cups. Throne is on the ocean's edge, which can symbolize the place where feeling and thoughts exist. Maybe you need to take a beach trip.
Oh, just go back.
Again.
But I'll go again.
Or maybe, maybe that has, maybe it's like a past thing instead of a
Yeah,
future
that's
thing.
true.
Oh,
Oh no.
she sits alone, which can allow her to think.
Which
So,
is sometimes what I need to do. Yeah, just have a bit of
emotional self-control,
Yeah.
sit, think, reflect.
before I do
Journal.
things. Yeah, journaling's really helps actually. For obviously for people who don't know us, Nay has made me a journal for the past probably 2.5 years.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And it's really helped, definitely. And I can really notice, especially when I fall off doing it. Like when I was in South Korea, I did it not as much as I'd like because number one, we were super busy and I just didn't feel I was in a good space.
You weren't in a good headspace there.
But now I'm feeling like it's okay just to sit down and make like even just silly things like a to-do list rather than just being like, right, I have to do everything today. It's nice to just work through things slowly. So yeah, that definitely applies, I think.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
Very sexy.
Is it?
2 of Cups, but this is 2 very masculine men.
Okay.
That are looking very intimate.
Wow.
One is a Taurus, which is what I am.
Okay.
2 of Cups. Look at that.
2 of Cups. Ooh, okay. Very juicy.
Very sensual.
Okay. The 2 of Cups card signifies a harmonious partnership, mutual attraction, and deep emotional connection between 2 people, often representing the blossoming of love, a new relationship, or a strong bond within an existing one. Essentially, it symbolizes a positive and balanced union where both parties feel fulfilled and understood. How would you say that?
Yeah, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things are good in a marriage.
Yeah.
At the moment. Yeah. With this stress, definitely. With like he has his own business here in Vietnam and I do teaching, but I do mostly if I think of like business that I work on that I stress about.
Yeah.
The YouTube stuff and focusing on that. But other than that, we've been pretty good.
I feel like as an outsider as well, like you know, you and Peter, like mutual understanding. Even when you both live like such different lives, but at the same time, like you're very unified.
Yeah.
You know, like when to help out and when to like take a step back, and I think he knows that as well. Like,
I agree. I think he'll like that. I'll show that to him. Are we ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, good.
Okay. So today we had a few different ideas of what we were going to do next, but I think what I've been enjoying about the podcast is we get kind of not fixated, that's the wrong word, but like we enjoy speaking about something so much, then we have new ideas as we're going with where the next episode's going to take us, but that also sometimes doesn't happen, and I think that's also fine. It's nice to have like something refreshing and something new to do.
On like number 99 we go, do you know what, let's do this instead, like let's talk about this instead. Which I do quite like, because then you get really excited about the story and research happens a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree. But today we've kind of gone back into the cryptid side of things. We enjoyed our second episode. And I was also saying to Charne earlier, like it's not been an area that I've ever researched, but it's also something that's so popular, like in pop culture, in movies, in a lot of things I enjoy, in my literature. There's a lot of reference to cryptids, but it's never something I've actively researched. It's never been something which is quite sad, really. When you enjoy something, you're supposed to kind of learn more about it, but I've never really looked into it until now.
I quite like it in a way where I am a consumer.
Yeah.
Like I will listen to podcasts about either supernatural, spiritual, or cryptids, or even aliens sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, go into that realm. But researching it and sitting down and like looking into the history, reading stories where people have actually experienced these things, especially from other countries.
Yeah.
Like things you've heard of. like Bigfoot. You've heard of Bigfoot.
Yeah, everybody
How much
knows about it.
research have you
Yeah.
done into
History.
Bigfoot?
Yeah. So yeah, we are both going to kind of talk about our topic today, but I've gone for more of like the historical roots, and I've tried to cover as much ground as possible without being boring. But it was, again, like I say, it was something that I've never researched before, so I was finding out a lot of things along the way. So there's probably some things I've missed, and hopefully we can like help each other out along the way.
And I'm gonna take the story aspect for this episode. I'm gonna tell us a story. After that, we'll listen to Laura, and she'll tell us about the history.
Yeah.
All right. Laura, are you ready?
I am ready.
I always thought the Banshee was just an old Irish tale, something my grandmother used to tell us to give us kids the creeps and panicked giggles before bed. She used to warn us about the foreboding of the keening woman, the wails in the night, the 3 loud knocks at your door foretelling death. I never truly believed in her, not until a week ago. I was sat at home on Friday night watching a movie and eating some crisps. I know it was about 2:30 in the morning because when I got up to go to the bathroom, I checked my phone and was surprised at how late it had gotten. I was contemplating going to bed, but the movie was almost finished. While considering all of this, I was walking back to the living room when my train of thought was derailed by a loud knock on the front door just down the hall from where I stood. The first knock froze me in step and I instantly went cold. My whole body felt numb. Then the second knock came, and I just continued to stare at the door at the end of the hall. When the third knock came, it was as if it jolted me and I started moving forward. I cleared the hall and stopped right in front of the door with my hand hovering over the doorknob when I realized what I was about to do. As if I had just woken up from a dream, I shook my head and thought, what the hell are you doing? There was no way that anyone I knew would be knocking on my door at that time of night. I slowly backed away from the door and grabbed my phone from the sofa. Not looking at the front door, I sprinted past it and ran upstairs, locking my bedroom door behind me. The next day, I called my mom and told her about the eerie experience I had. And while she was concerned, she said it must just have been a drunk person trying to get home, knocking on the wrong door before realizing and then staggering away. But that doesn't explain the feeling I had, the strange dream-like haze I experienced before coming to and stopping myself from opening the door. And what the hell would have happened? What would I have seen if I did open the door? I decided to put the whole thing behind me and stop obsessing about it. The entire day I kept thinking of my grandmother. She passed away a few years ago and I still missed her. So to distract myself, I dug out one of her old family cookbooks and was busy making a good old Irish stew. Just as the sun was setting and I was ladling some stew into a bowl, I nearly dropped the entire thing when I heard it. The first knock, then the second, and then the third. Each one slow, heavy, final. My breath caught in my throat. The house was silent, too silent. Even the wind had died. The air felt colder. The world seemed to hold its breath. And then a wail, high and shrill, drifting through the keyhole, seeping through the crack. A sound that raised the hair on my neck, that made my bones feel hollow. A cry of grief, of death. I didn't sleep that night. By dawn, the news had come. My brother Sean was found dead in his bed. No warning, The coroner said that it was a sudden cardiac arrest. Later on, I told my mom about the knocks that came again the second night and the mournful wail that came after. And she told me that she remembered hearing a similar wail, but from much further outside of our house a few years ago, and how 2 days later my gran had passed in the nursing home. Although the knocks on my door and the scream of what I can only assume was a banshee were terrifying, I also feel that she was warning me what was to come, trying to knock on my door to let me know, and finally wailing when his time was up, almost like she was mourning him as he was leaving this world. It's all comforting in a sense.
I like that you said at the end it was comforting, because I feel like whenever people think of the banshee, it's automatically a scary thing, which it would be if you had this experience. Yeah.
But as we know through research, that is not the case.
No.
The banshee is someone that tells us something's coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a cryptid or a ghost or whatever myth that is out to like hurt or destroy you.
And I think from like a banshee's perspective, I think it's so sad that it is often associated with, when people think of it, they think of like this horrible, something that's almost haunting them, when in fact folklore says it's a warning, and it's supposed to be like a symbol, something comforting. As sometimes distressing as that can be, if you did see something like this or hear something like this, it would be horrible, but at the same time it's trying to do its job, which is just to give you a little bit of a warning about something.
From what the stories that I did read about this, similar to this one that I just read, people who do experience it, most of them have a banshee connected to their family. So they know of the legend. So if they do hear it, they're not as terrified as someone that hears it that doesn't know about what a banshee is and what they actually mean. So they experience it, but they don't find it as terrifying as someone else would.
I like that. I just wanted to, I'm going into the history, but I wanted to just tell you a little bit about something that actually happened to my family.
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Now, people, obviously we're talking about the banshee, but when you mentioned talking about banshees, and as I was putting not a lot of research in, but when I was researching them, I didn't realize how strong the ties were to Celtic culture, like in Ireland. My great granddad, my mum's granddad, he was Irish, and he had an experience now that, as I was researching, I really believe, if you believe or not, he was a hyper-religious man. But I believe
the Irish, I mean, they're very Catholic.
Yeah, I believe like if you were going to compare this experience he had to something, you would say it was a banshee. But it didn't have any signs of like the three knocks or the wail. So basically, my nana, so my mum's mum, she told me a story when my granddad, they were all living together. So she's from a big family, 3 sisters and 2 brothers. And they were living in a house in Salford. And basically my great granddad, he was woken up by a noise. He never really expressed what the noise was, or if she told me, I can't remember. But he was woken up by a noise, and he swore he saw the Virgin Mary in his room. Again, hyper-religious, but it was exactly like you said. So when I spoke to my nana about this, I was like, was he not scared? And my nana said, no. He followed this woman. He was under the impression it was a Virgin Mary, and he followed her all the way through the house, down the stairs and out into the front garden, and she disappeared. And then 2 days later, he had a telegram to say that his mum had died in Ireland. And that when I was researching this, I was like, people say they experience the banshee in different ways, but I was like, that's definitely like a kind of like a warning, whether it is a cryptid or if it was a ghost, or even if you don't believe that in it, it was just him knowing something was wrong. It's that like forewarning that he knew something was coming, even if it wasn't real, you know. And I just thought, to me that sounds like a banshee, but without all of like the gore and the...
I agree with you. A lot of people say that they experience it different.
Yeah.
And that might be like a personal thing. Like some people experience the knocking, which is it in a lot of stories that I heard, but it's the lesser known one.
Yeah.
More people know of the wailing.
Yeah.
But there are different ways. That's very interesting.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I just thought it could have been a ghost or it could have been my granddad. But when I was researching this, I was like, it's really interesting that it's Irish. Like, he never said it was a banshee, or, you know, he just said he'd seen the Virgin Mary, but it just turned out that his mum had passed. And he, like my nan had said, like it was a telegram he got at that time that basically had said that his mum had died in Ireland. So he had to leave the family in the UK and go and, you know, kind of sort that out. I think his dad was still alive, or maybe just had died quite recently after her. But
I bet that made him feel better.
Yeah, because I said to my nan, like, was he not scared? And she's like, no, he followed her out of the house, but he was he was very, very superstitious. Like, I mean, he believed in everything, but he never compared it to a banshee. I guess by then people would associate it with like, the gory kind of scary. And he felt calm.
The banshee can also appear as a young, beautiful woman.
Yeah.
So most people say like the old white, I almost want to say it's like a haggish kind of look to her. But then they also say she could appear as a beautiful young woman. And I mean,
whatever gives you comfort,
I'm guessing, especially if you're like a Catholic person, a young Mary would be
Mary in your room.
Yeah. But you'd have to be really superstitious to follow that woman.
Yeah,
because if
okay.
I'm waking up with with a woman at the foot of my bed, I don't know if I'm following her out. You must have had a feeling.
Yeah, that kind of like intuition. You know, a lot of people say that, don't they? Even if you don't see a banshee or a spirit, you have like a feeling.
But a lot of people haven't seen them.
Yeah.
They either hear them,
hear something,
or
a dread.
There's like a knowing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, I just kind of looked into the history of things. So people often associate the chilling folklore of the banshee as something harrowing, horrible, or, you know, has a foreboding sense to it. It originates from the Irish or Celtic mythology. The wails of the banshee still echo in the minds of many. It's a cryptid, and it's deeply ingrained in lots of cultures throughout the world. So obviously you told your story first, but I was going to ask, like, what springs to mind when you think of a banshee? I'm
going to take away like before the research.
Yeah.
Not that I picked up some of the history, but I tried not to go too in depth.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to do the history side. Obviously the wailing, Irish, like an old haggard woman. And I knew before researching it that it wasn't bad. Like, it wasn't like she murders you.
Yeah.
I knew it was like a element of like foreboding, like
warning.
She warns of death to come in the family.
Yeah.
That's about what I knew about it.
The same as me, yeah. So the banshee, known as the Banshee in Gaelic, translates to woman of the fairy mound.
Don't come for Laura's pronunciation.
No, could be completely off there. To most, she is believed to be a spirit, usually a female entity who mourns the death of a loved one. Her mournful wail or scream often signals an impending death within a family. Specifically originating amongst the families of the noble lineage of Ireland, she originally was said to protect or prepare families for a loss. The roots of the Banshee trace back to pre-Christian Ireland. She was a spirit or goddess often associated with the supernatural outer world. She's described as a goddess of death or harbinger of doom. Celtic goddess, similar to the Celtic goddess Morrigan, who also had the power to foretell death. Descriptions of the Banshee depend on the region and specific story or sighting. Usually a woman of varying ages, sometimes old and haggard, or young and beautiful. Although her appearance can shift to her appearance can sometimes shift depending on the story. She was also said to shapeshift into animals, often associated with death. People have recorded accounts of her crying tears of blood for fallen soldiers on the battlefield in other wars and battles in the past. All stories vary, but one thing that ties all of the tales and sightings together is her defining feature, the mournful cry, often described as a wail or a scream. The sound can be heard for miles and is etched into the hearts of the listener. Although the Banshee has a strong tie to the Celtic regions of the world, including Scotland, Wales, and parts of Cornwall, this idea of a figure of foretelling or foreboding weaves into Greek mythology, and the Fates, who were responsible for weaving the destinies of mortals, including
Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Oh.
So the Fates were they weren't the gods, but they were
I know a bit about them. Yeah.
So it included determining their time and date of death.
They were like a council.
Yeah. For me, the most interesting part is that they are always linked back to women and the feminine traits of expression, loyalty, and care, something that's often overlooked when we think about the Banshee. Because, as we were saying before, people often go for like the kind of gothic, terrifying, like almost like horror aspect to the Banshee rather than like the traits of being the person who warns people about things. From one side of the world to the other, I also wanted to see if there are any cryptids similarly associated to the Banshee here in Asia, Southeast Asia, and indeed there are.
Oh.
So we've got again, my pronunciation could be terrible, the Pontinian in Malaysia, the Kawa no Kami in Japan, the Churals in India, and even here in Vietnam, the Ma Da or Ma Ko.
Oh.
Are the ghosts, female ghosts who wail over the tragic or untimely deaths of their loved ones.
We have one near us.
Mm-hmm.
There's said, so for anyone that doesn't know, we live in Hue City, and Da Nang City is like the next city over, and that's a beach town. So to get there, you need to go through a pass. What's the pass's name there? Hai Van Pass. Now, in the Hai Van Pass, there's said to be a woman that wails, like cries, for lost children. So it's said that she's either looking for children, her children. I'd have to research it a bit more, but I remember hearing about this wailing woman, and she wails about a baby, like a lost baby.
I've heard a similar story about like a lost baby around
very
the
woman in white kind of ghostly story. So might be a banshee.
It could be the Banshee of Vietnam, Banshee of Hue.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just interesting, like, you know, even across the world, they have different depictions of these women. And it says here in Vietnam, they're usually associated with an omen of disaster. Like if something bad is if something bad has already happened, that's when people are said to see these ghosts.
Okay.
Or like, you know, it's like mourning afterwards rather than
where the
before.
Banshee is more of it's coming.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a warning, yeah. So one of the I wanted to go in looking into pop culture a little bit, just briefly. So one of the earliest depictions of the Banshee in pop culture happened to be on the classic anthology series, probably most people know, The Twilight Zone. And The Twilight Zone kind of, similarly to what we do, they kind of tell a story and go into the history of things, and it's been going for years, many, many years. And the first noted, not word of mouth story, but like a novel, was a book called The Banshee by E.F. Benson. And both of these references, they reference the Banshee in a more, again, like a more horror-esque way. They go into the history of the Banshee and kind of like the foreboding scream, but it's supposed to scare you rather than be like a figure of comfort. So yeah, I put like a little quote in here. So it's just from the story of the Banshee. So the cry was a woman's cry, and yet it was unlike any human cry I had ever heard. So at the time, this was written in 1910, so it was really supposed to scare people rather than be a comforting thing. It was like a horror book, essentially. So these examples, they reflect the tension and the suspense associated with the Banshee and this powerful female entity. And just to summarize everything, so for me, the Banshee transcends cultural boundaries. It plays with female trauma, grief, and the mysteries of life and death. The Banshee's wail is also a symbol of the guardians that we might have in the other world, and the psychological struggles of people and the human fears of the unknown. Whether the Banshee is a figure of warning or protection, it still continues to haunt folklore, urging us to confront topics of death and human vulnerability. So people will still want to have an answer, whether it's to do with death. It's such an unknown thing. People want to have an answer or a warning about something.
It's very interesting how different countries and different places, different cultures have the same ghosts or the same cryptids that kind of serve the same purpose.
Yeah.
Like whether it's to help them mourn, to like take vengeance or things like that. It's always interesting to look into how things are linked. Like I really like that you looked into like what, because we live in Southeast Asia, what Southeast Asian cryptids or like mythologies are linked to or similar to something you find way back here in Ireland or like Scotland or the UK.
I didn't go too far down the rabbit hole, but that like the difference as well is so interesting. Like in India, the churals, they are like, they're always depicted always as beautiful women, and it's usually not a death. It's just, it can be any kind of problem or disaster, and maybe sometimes death. Beautiful women are seen and then they vanish. They're like compared to a witch. And then the Japanese version, so the Kawa no Kami, they are literally just a vision, like a vision of a female, like no sound, no coming to see you. It could just be a face, like a passing face. So a big thing after the people were talking about after the just before the tsunami. I don't know when that was, quite a while ago now, but people were seeing in small towns like random female, like visions of random females that they've never seen in a small town where you know everyone. People like, and it was like they're just like people popping up, and people were talking about like, did you see the girl down by
that beautiful girl down by the river?
Shop? And they're like, yeah, I saw her as well. I saw her 2 days ago up in the mountain when I was on my hike. Then a big natural disaster happens, which involves death and like destruction. But it's, you know, it's like, it's really interesting to like hear how different countries have these moments, like how, like see things, or like whether they know something bad is going to happen, which you can't do all the time, especially with a natural disaster. Like if somebody's ill in your family, that's completely different to there being a natural disaster. But it's interesting that people have these kind of folklore tales all over the world that come together, and people, I believe like they are a form of a banshee, like a warning or to provide comfort.
Would you say you believe?
I think yes, I think I do. It's a difficult one because I don't don't believe in like the typical, the wail or the knocking at doors, but I do believe it might present itself differently to people, to different people. Like I spoke about my granddad, or somebody seeing a face that just puts them, like makes them feel comfort before something's happened, and it's not until afterwards then you automatically go, oh, okay, well maybe that was like the foreboding of this death or this problem that I had.
Yes, I agree with you. I don't believe, but I do see the reasoning, like the reason that they exist in history. So while I was researching, I came across something where they were saying in Irish history, have you heard of the Keening women?
Yeah.
Similar
to the Banshee, right?
So Keening, don't have this written down, I'm going off memory, but Keening women, so in the Irish culture, obviously we know they take, like if someone dies, they take it very seriously, and it's a bit more like a celebration.
Yeah.
But they used to hire what they called keening women, and these would be women that cried. They were like professional mourners. So at the funeral, the keening women would cry and wail and, you know, put on a big show. to make, I don't know, maybe the louder they wailed, the more important the person was.
Okay.
Something like that. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But eventually these women were banished. So this practice was stopped, I believe, by the Catholic Church.
Probably when religion came in, yeah.
Yeah, they were stopped by the Catholic Church. They weren't allowed to, I guess, work anymore. And they ended up kind of becoming, let me go back. So these women were paid in alcohol.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So they would be hired to mourn, professional mourners, but they would be paid in alcohol.
Which probably a lot of people were back then, weren't
Yes.
they? Yeah.
So once they basically lost their jobs, the church came in, told them this practice is frowned upon now. You can't do this anymore. Now you've got a bunch of alcoholic older women wandering the streets,
Wailing,
basically.
yeah, looking for work.
Yeah. And so what it comes from is they were keening women, and they almost turned into like a witch ghost
Like
story.
an outcast,
like an
almost.
outcast, yes.
Yeah.
So like maybe they would live in like a cabin just outside of the village or something. But where I want to connect this with how I feel like banshees might have come to be was someone could have heard a keening woman walking down the road wailing, and then the next day their cousin died.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, it takes one or two of those kinds of situations for people to go like, oh,
did you hear that?
It must be a banshee.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that part of history.
I do have one last little story. So I came across, it's like I think it's like a not quite a ghost hunting website or something, but this woman had sent them her story, and I found this on their website. So her name is Emily, and this is a letter that she wrote them telling her story. So it goes, I have quite an experience here in Ireland with what I believe to be a banshee. They are a typical folk monster here, and I personally thought them to be legends and old stories. But last Tuesday, I had an encounter that can only be explained by that. If you guys don't know what a banshee is, to roughly explain it, they are a creature / spirit that is assigned to families. Some people view them as good things, some as bad. They are said to be heard crying or screaming when someone in your family is about to die as a form of mourning. I live in a small farmhouse in a pretty rural area of Ireland, which isn't saying much as most of Ireland is rural anyway. I heard what sounded like at first the screaming sound that cats make when they have a standoff, but it slowly started to transform into a constant ringing scream coming from the distance. It was coming from a field next to me, which is locally nicknamed the Far Bog, as it is just that, a bog or a marsh that is far away from anything in particular. I panicked and thought that someone had gotten stuck in the bog, which is actually a common way of death here, sadly. So I called the guards, the Irish police, and ran outside to try and find her. When I got to the bog, I saw a woman standing upright on a stone wall that borders the bog. She had her head tilted upwards and was screaming so loudly that it actually caused me some pain. She appeared to be wearing a flowing dress of some sort. This freaked me out as I presumed it was some drugged up drunk person, and I ran back inside and waited for the guards to come. A single patrol car came up a few minutes later, but the screaming had stopped by then. I explained to them exactly what had happened, and they were actually the first to mention the possibility that it was a banshee. They mentioned that this sort of call happens every few years. They officially wrote it down as a drunk and disorderly person on private property who left, but then told me to call all of my immediate family to make sure that everyone is okay or everything is okay, as they both believed it was a banshee. I did just that and sadly found out that my mother had passed away in her sleep that night. The funeral was a few days ago, and since then I have been transfixed by the story of the banshee and have looked up as much information as I can. In the progress, I came across your paranormal site. I thought that you guys might be at least slightly interested in my story. You can email me at any time if you want more information. Thanks.
That's really
Emily.
interesting. Especially considering it's so current, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what year, 2014.
Yeah.
2014.
Still though, to have the police come in and automatically assuming it's...
But that just shows how in depth it is in Irish law, but also still to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, what other country
would automatically say...
Would the police officer go, have you considered it being spiritual?
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I think that's really special that they still have such a good connection with that part of their lineage.
Yeah, I think it's nice too. It's always somewhere I've wanted to go as well, Ireland, and I'd love to.
I'd love to as well.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Beautiful country as well.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's the story.
No, I liked it a lot. I think looking into this, it's quite easy to get sucked into the typical depictions of a banshee, but I think if anything, it just means different things to different people. Even if you have a sense of foreboding, if you have a feeling, people could automatically say,
I feel like it helps you.
Yeah.
It helps the people that have heard it. Obviously, maybe in the moment, they're terrified.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. If you have stories that you would like to tell us or that you would like us to read out on the podcast, we have an email. It is thestoryseekers.mail@gmail.com. thestoryseekers.mail@gmail.com. Send us your stories, whether it be a cryptid, a ghost story, something that creeped you out, anything, we are here for it. You can send it over and we'll read it on the pod.
Yeah, absolutely. We can tie it in somehow for sure.
Oh yeah. The end.
The end. The ending is so funny.